All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for joining this session today. We are really happy to be here with all of you. This is a panel discussion about Loira Limbal's documentary Through the Night that you all had a chance to watch during the day today. My name is Pilar Gonalons-Pons, and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of Pennsylvania here in Philadelphia. And it is my pleasure to moderate this panel tonight that will feature 5 remarkable advocates for caregivers. I will introduce the members of the panel in just a second, but before I do that, I wanted to share a couple of very brief introductory reflections with all of you. So 3 years ago, in the fall of 2018, I organized a conference that was titled After the Care Crisis. And the conference sought to provide a forum where academics and community grassroots activists could meet and talk to each other about the pressing issues and concerns facing caregivers in the United States and around the world. And I recall beginning my introductory remarks back then in 2018, saying that I was very angry at how our society devalues the work of providing care for others, very angry at the fact that workers in home care and in childcare, disproportionately women of color, make poverty wages and have access to barely any or no benefits at all. And very angry at the fact that the work of raising children, caring for those who are sick or frail or have other care needs is not supported, valued, and it's entirely incompatible with making a living wage at a job, which basically means that many caregivers end up in a situation of poverty. And this was 2018, and it's funny to reflect on it today because so much has changed since then. And yet also so much remains the same. The pandemic has produced a gigantic sort of like shift in the public awareness about the importance of essential work and care work and the way that we devalue it. The national conversation around policies to support caregivers has advanced tremendously in some ways. We are being, there's policies very much on the table to make unprecedented investments in the childcare sector. Also, the child tax credit, which is, a series of monthly checks that every parent with a child can receive every month temporarily now for a year. We'll see if it becomes longer. But basically, major policy changes are being debated and they are on the table. So this is gigantic shift. But at the same time, there's immense obstacles still that lie ahead, right? The passage of some of these bills is by no means a done deal yet. It's going to be a struggle. Even if the legislation passes, the details of it and how it is defined, it will really determine whether new investments in care really land in the pockets of caregivers or whether they land in pockets of other players in this sector that are not the primary providers of care. So I think there's like major, huge challenges lying ahead, but this is a really interesting moment to be reflecting on this because there's been really a big shift in the public conversation around these issues. And it is that I cannot wait to learn more from our panelists tonight to learn about the real world actions, initiatives, and lessons that we can learn from supporting how to transform caregiving for a better future. So without further ado, I want to introduce the panel tonight. The first member of the panel, Carolyn Hill, is a low-income mother and a grandmother with the Every Mother is a Working Mother Network organization here in Philadelphia. She is the guardian and primary caregiver of her 3 grandchildren, as well as having been the primary caregiver of her ailing mother, her brother and nephew who are formerly incarcerated, and numerous other family and community members who know to come to her in crisis. When her 2 nieces were removed from her care by the child welfare in 2012, she fought back, working with Every Mother is a Working Mother Network in Philadelphia to take her case to the Pennsylvania Superior Court, which placed her nieces with distant family members who had more money. So she has worked ever since to help others going through the child welfare and the criminal justice systems and working to get resources into the hands of the mothers and the primary caregivers. Welcome, Carolyn. Our second member of our panel is Margaret Prescod, a founding member of Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike, is an immigrant from Barbados who grew up in poverty in the Global South, and after her family immigrated to the United States. She raised her daughter as a single mother in Los Angeles and at times received social services. In 1977, she was a delegate from the New York State to the first congressionally mandated National Conference on Women, and there, along with leaders of the National Welfare Rights Organization and her sister's organization, Wages for Housework campaign, won a resolution that opposed the mandatory work requirements for welfare recipients and called for welfare to be called a wage, not charity. At the 1995 UN, United Nations Conference for Women in Beijing, she led the lobbying efforts that won the United Nations agreement by governments to measure and value unwaged work in the home, on the land, and in the community. She helps coordinate the Care Income Now campaign, which is an international campaign for a care income for those caring for people and the planet. Margaret also hosts a Pacifica Radio national broadcast, Sojourner Truth. Thirdly, we have Alejandro Utria. Alejandro Utria first joined the National Domestic Workers Pennsylvania chapter. The National Domestic Workers Alliance, for those who don't know, is an organization and advocacy group around the domestic workers, and there's a chapter here in Pennsylvania. He joined it in 2020 as a Spanish interpreter and later worked to coordinate a vaccination campaign that saw more than 500 domestic workers and their essential worker family members receive vaccinations. He is proud to bring his language skills and creativity to his new role, supporting the implementation of the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights here in Philadelphia. Alejandro holds an undergraduate degree in urban studies from the University of Pennsylvania and lives in West Philadelphia with his partner and cats. Hi, Alejandro. And lastly, but not least, Zakiyyah, thank you so much for joining us. Zakiyyah Boone is a passionate educational leader with 25 years of experience in the field. She has experience in a variety of educational settings, including childcare, out-of-school time programming, summer camp, enrichment programs, and juvenile justice. In her current role as the CEO of Wonder Spring Early Education, she gives her passion and expertise to provide high-quality early learning experiences to children throughout the region. A Philadelphia native and product of its school system, Zakiyyah is dedicated to supporting the neediest children. She's a mother of two and proud nana to grand dog Coconut. Join me in welcoming our panel tonight. Thank you so much for being here, to all of you. And hopefully everybody can see us in our screens. I'm gonna unpin my video so that we can be more, how do I do that here? All right, so hopefully everyone can see us, and if there's any problems, please feel free to use the chat. So before I jump into our conversation tonight, just logistical note, we will have 40 minutes of sort of like a structured conversation. I will moderate a conversation, we'll discuss a series of questions, and then after that, we will open it up for audience Q&A. In the meantime, if you already have questions that you want to make sure that we cover during the Q&A, please feel free to type them in the chat, and we will look through that when we open it to audience questions. If there are any technical difficulties or other things that you might be experiencing, also please make sure, feel free to use the chat, and we can make sure that we can address that. So with that, I want to start our conversation. So again, it's a pleasure to be here in conversation with all of you. And I hope that all of you have had a chance to watch the documentary, the powerful documentary, Through the Night. And I wanted to start with the first question to just reflect on, so from your point of view, what are the most pressing problems that caregivers are facing today in the United States? And which of these issues have you seen represented in the documentary, or which ones are absent from the documentary? So I'm going to see if someone would like to volunteer to start.
I'm happy to answer that question. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I felt that the documentary was extraordinarily accurate in how it portrayed how caregivers have to give so much of themselves that sometimes their own children get the short end of the stick. That is the case in so many childcare situations, and not even if it's overnight care. I'm talking regular daytime care. Caregivers give so much to other children that by the time they have to interact with their own children, they just don't even have anything left to give. Their tank is empty. So that was a very realistic point of view, and it really the documentary did a great job illustrating that point.
Thank you, Zakiyyah. Someone else would like to jump in with reactions? Margaret? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
All righty. I agree with Zakiyyah, and watching the documentary actually reminded me of my own struggles with childcare as a single mom for most of my daughter's life, since she was about 4 or 5 years old, actually. And even though I wasn't in waged work at that time, I was doing full-time community work, volunteer work, indeed campaigning on the issue of valuing caregivers. I mean, the work that I did at the UN before 1977, the work I did there with the National Welfare Rights Organization. I wasn't a mom then, I was a young woman then, but all focused on this particular issue. And I think that the film itself and Zakiyyah's comments really points to the issue and the separation. I'd like to broaden the definition of caregiver a bit and include not only caregivers who are paid, generally, of course, we know they're low paid, but also include those of us who are unpaid caregivers. And we have made the case, our wing of the women's movement have made the case for decades that part of the reason that caregivers who are in the wage workforce, who are getting paid for that care, is so low is because caregiving is expected to be done for free. No one is expected to, to get a decent wage doing it. And so to the degree that the unwaged work that we do, raising children, taking care of elders, et cetera, to the degree that that is devalued, that has no compensation, et cetera, that then carries over when we go into wage work, where we're also low paid. And I could say a little bit more about that in the discussion, because we managed to get something passed in the United Nations and some time use surveys done that we think can help to raise the wages of both home care workers and domestic workers. We're trying to encourage the unions to take a look at that. But because of the divide, when people talk about caregivers, they generally are thinking about people who are wage caregivers, not necessarily those of us who are unwaged caregivers, but there's an interrelationship between the two. And I think it has been a weakness for our movement for those two wings, so to speak, not really to get together to know what the other is doing that could be a strength for the work they're doing. The last thing I just want to say about that is that although I was not in wage work, because I was doing so much volunteer work, I needed childcare. And it was really hard and it was really expensive. And I also wanted quality childcare. I just didn't want to put my daughter into any, children are not cars to be just parked in a garage so that we can go out and do the real thing, real work Okay, raising children is real work. Caring for them in childcare is also real work. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you so much. And I think we had Carolyn who was ready to, yeah, please.
Yes, I'm me. I have been a caregiver since I was real young. I took care of my sisters and brothers. I made sure their hair and stuff was combed down. I was the last one out late for school. I took care of my grandmother. I would go with her on the bus to her doctor's appointments and run to the store for her and help her bathe herself. And I took care of my mom who passed away from cancer. I had my two nieces who DHS took from me because I didn't have claiming I didn't have enough money to take care of them. I also took care of my nephew who's been in and out of jail. I have a brother who's on his disability, I'm his primary caretaker, and I haven't gotten paid for none of them jobs while all my 64 years. You know, I'm 64 years old and I have custody of my 3 grandkids who I take care of, get stuff for school and make sure they get to school and everything. And I haven't got paid. I did have a job working for a friend, but when I did take that job, they cut my benefits. And the job didn't even last that long because she didn't need me no more. So I'm just, you know, like, when I was trying to get money for caregiver, I couldn't get it by being cut. So, you know, it's hard when you're trying to make more, not less. You're trying, you know, by taking on 2, I thought I would get more, but no, they look at it as, no, they just said I was being overpaid. So yeah, it's a lot. I did do a lot of caregiving for my neighbors. A couple of them passed away on me, who I fed, went to store, cooked for, and you know, just anybody, other kids. I got my daughter friends wishing I was their grandmothers, they mother and their grandmother, because the way I treat people and do for kids. And I do a lot. You know, I love kids. I love them. And like far as kids in the welfare system, they need a lot of attention. And like I used to have to explain to my kids, these kids is traumatized, especially when I had my nieces, and they need a lot of love and care. So that's a job right there, showing them kids and putting your kids to the side to show them that they need some love.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Alejandro, did you want to?
Definitely. First of all, thank you for inviting me to the panel. My name is Alejandro. I'm representing the National Domestic Workers Alliance chapter here in Pennsylvania. I myself am not a caregiver. I'm here representing our workers here in Pennsylvania who do that work. And for them, it's just as Margaret pointed out, it's a distinction of those that do this work for wage work, right? Although they all go home, the majority of them go home and do this work for their families as well, right? That other shift. I'll say that what struck me the most and first with the documentary, both times I saw it, that relates to what I know from our workers is the amount of effort that it takes to do this care work and do it well. That it's love work as well. So there's that much more poured into it. You're dealing with people's family. You're not in the film's case, but in the case of our workers, you're working inside their homes as well. So there's that other level of respect and care there. And it's very demanding work physically, emotionally, mentally. So we see a lot of this as well, this exhaustion, this physical strain as well over time. I think in terms of things that weren't present in the film, but we know because a lot of us saw this film for the first time screened virtually, was the pandemic, obviously, right? Imagine everything we saw with the 16 kids running around at any given time, that during the pandemic, right? And with us, that was a situation where the majority of our workers who do not have formal status in this country were cut out from receiving any sort of federal benefit or public aid around the time of the pandemic, while that same week they were all told by their employers not to come to their homes and not to work inside their homes because of the pandemic. So that means no work and no support, right? So that was something that was different. but that's connected to the idea that was brought up multiple times during the film about how there is federal support for care workers for the daycare facilities themselves, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And as Margaret mentioned, it's not about just paying for this work, just providing a wage. It's providing a wage to obtain that quality work and have it be sustained, and have the people that do this work want to do this work for the long haul and be supported to do it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think I want to pick up or like follow on Margaret's point about expanding our definition of caregiving and in making sure that we're sort of like including waged and unwaged work, waged care work and unwaged care work. And I think one thing that the documentary also depicts very beautifully is this relationship between the different caregivers, right? So we have Nunu who runs the daycare center, and then we have the various moms that are featured, and the parallels in the kinds of challenges that they face, and the kinds of relationship that they develop amongst themselves is something that is, I think it's quite telling of illustrating how these boundaries about waged and unwaged become fuzzy once you look at it on the ground. Of course, having a wage makes a big difference for various things, but when we're coming to understand the actual skills that are involved in doing this work, the kinds of investments and efforts and that is required, that divide really disappears, right? Like it really is one thing. And on that theme, one thing that I wanted to ask you all about is about basically what have you seen in your world of advocacy and sort of like activism in these topics? What have you seen as possibilities and challenges of bridging this gap between waged and unwaged caregiving? If you have examples of cases in which there has been, an alliance or some sort of collaboration or attempts to do that didn't go so well. Yeah, I'm just interested in reflections about these possibilities and challenges of coming together and connecting these two big areas of caregiving. And I don't know, Margaret, you might have already detailed experiences on that.
Sure, I can give a few examples. What I referred to earlier, I mean, if you're trying to value a job, right? Let's say taking care of children or bathing an elder or making sure they're taking their medication, et cetera. This is work that society generally just expects, and it's mainly women. We welcome men when they do it as well. We're just supposed to do it out of love. Of course, we love our families and we love our children, but when we have to pay rent, when we have to go to the supermarket, we're not going to say, well, you know what? We're taking care of people that we love. They're not going to accept that as payment. They're going to want money. Okay. So one of the reasons that, for example, we went to let me start with the United Nations, because I think that ties in with the work of the National Domestic Home Workers Alliance, is that one of the things that we said that governments have to begin to measure and value, meaning count the time that is spent doing this caregiving work, but also what is the economic value to society. And we were outraged that insurance companies, for example, were running ads saying, well, if a mom dies, this is what it will cost to replace her services. But when she's alive, what the heck is she getting? I mean, just picture that, okay? It's just outrageous. But it was a long fight. I can tell you, it took us literally 10 years in the UN to finally get the language in 1995 in Beijing that we wanted. And we're all volunteers, by the way. This is a grassroots movement. We're not any big NGOs, although we did go and get consultative status at the UN when we found out there was such a thing that gave us access to governments, the lobby, et cetera. But after that resolution, we were pressing in the United States, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually started to do time use surveys, and they have actually credited our movement for them beginning to do these time use surveys in which they were measuring and valuing that work. And I could tell you, we really fought. I think I got off camera for a minute. I'm getting various texts that kind of interfere here. You all can still see me, right? Okay. Yeah. So they, so what? And we fought to say you have to count simultaneous tasks, because the only way you get through a day doing housework, you can't just do one thing at a time. You're cooking at the same time you're watching the kids, at the same time you're talking to your mom to make sure she took her medication or whatever. But the value of that for both home care workers as well as domestic workers, they began to list those jobs and list the value of that work. So we're saying, if I were a member of a union, if I was a member of home care workers, whatever, my starting point when I'm negotiating for my members would be to look at those time use surveys and to say, look, this is what the US government, this is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics has said about the value of your work. So why then are we getting these poverty wages? It's outrageous. But I'm sorry to say that hasn't happened as far as I know. Alejandro, maybe you know a bit more about it, but perhaps you could really encourage the union to do it. And in terms of the domestic workers, those in Trinidad and Tobago, the National Union of Domestic Workers, founded by the late Clotilde Walcott, and also the domestic workers in Peru, right now they say, we want our work paid for, the work we do in our home and the work we do in other people's homes. So they are beginning to make that kind of connection, but that connection hasn't been made in the United States. And we feel that this is something that very practically would be a big power, not only for domestic workers, but also for home care workers. And I have to just finally lift up Ophelia McFadden, who was the president of the Home Care Workers Union in California at some point. And she called us one day and say, hey, what is this thing about wages for housework? I want to join. And working with Ophelia, we fought for and we won in California that family members who are caring for other family members can get paid. And I think, I don't know how wide that has spread across the United States, but I think it has happened in other states. But that happened in California, and it was a precedent, and it was an example of unpaid caregivers coming together with low-paid caregivers and making a campaign that was a benefit to all of us. There are other examples, but I'll just stop there.
If I can just piggyback a little bit on something that you said, Margaret, the economic impact of the care that is provided is very, very evident today. Child care centers far and wide across the nation are very short-staffed right now. And as a result, everybody else is short-staffed. So you go to your local Starbucks, they can't even get products in because of supply chain issues. Yes. Why? Because the truck drivers don't have anybody to watch their kids. They're paying in Philadelphia, they are paying parents to drive their kids to school because they don't have enough school bus drivers. Why? Bet you school bus drivers don't have anybody to watch their kids. So like childcare, that caregiving is the workforce behind the workforce. And if people don't have anyone to take care of, especially of their children, loved ones are, elderly is another whole class in and of itself. But if you don't have anyone to take care of your children, that's it. Like you're stuck, so you can't do anything else. And so that disrupts everything else. How many businesses cannot even operate at their full capacity because their staff don't have anyone to watch their kids? It's like, so it's a very domino effect industry. And so the impact of not having that care available is very measurable in this pandemic. It is very evident and very measurable.
Hi, this is Carolyn. This is a sample that what I went through with my brother. He was incarcerated, so they let him out on house arrest. Now, mind you, they gives him a case manager that's supposed to come out and look on him and make sure he's doing the right thing. But in the meantime, he can't go out his room. You got family members coming there, feeding him, going to the store for him, but they're not getting paid for it. They're the ones that's getting the pay. and put some more house arrest, and they the ones that's getting the pay. So when you ask, can we get paid for, oh, we'll get somebody that'll come out and do this, but never do. They just was getting paid for the name and not doing the service. And it's like, that was caregiving then, because I had to do that because I was responsible for him. I was his payee and everything, you know, I was getting his SSI and making sure he had everything that he need in the house, in this room he had rented. But I never got paid for that. And that was caregiving work too, to make sure he had water, food in his apartment, and whenever he had to go to court, I had to go with him. I had to make sure he was on time. And I never got to pay a single dime for none of that work that I did for him. And right now, still doing it and can't get it. So that's part of my caregiving. You know, I'm still ain't getting paid. And I still do the work. I don't have no problem doing it for him. Yes.
I'll say with that example of the house arrest and the example of the Philly school bus drivers, you'll all find as the conversation goes on that all the gaps there are in the care infrastructure in this country will become increasingly obvious and increasingly absurd, as if everybody doesn't need care, as if everybody's families don't need that, right? And they don't need affordable and quality care, right? And Zakiyyah was talking exactly to this point, but it's one of our like one-liners at the Alliance, is that domestic work is the work that makes all other work possible. We joke about what would happen if all domestic workers, all care workers would just go on strike for 1 day, for 2 days. Philly would stop, you know, the country would stop because of exactly what you're describing, you know? And that's why at the national level, we have these advocacy campaigns pushing legislation for funding, right? Under the name of Care is Essential, which is a name obviously that came around this year with all this talk of essential workers, and recognizing that care work, waged or unwaged, is absolutely essential to the functioning of everything and everybody. And I think that especially from a perspective of, well, from a male capitalist white perspective, people think that you need care only when you get ill. You need care only when you age. You need care only for children. That's something that is temporary, that you age out of, but all of us need care all the time. And all of us are aging. Being alive is about aging, you know? So this is something that everyone is gonna need. And we know, obviously, something else we talk about at the Alliance is that nationally, the demographics are that the country is going to have an increased proportion of folks over the age of 65 in the decades to come, right? So how is it that we haven't figured this out, right? At the national levels, when of course everyone doing the work day in and day out knows that this is a problem and knows that there are solutions, right? With regards to the question of bridging the wage and unwage, I would just like to speak about the work of organizing itself, which Margaret was alluding to. And that's really what our work is that our work is about some direct service to the domestic workers who are our members, but mostly about the time that they spend organizing themselves, the time that we spend in meetings, the time that we spend in campaigns, the time that we spend looking for other members, right? And it's a way for us to take care of the people doing the care work, right? And that's something that some of our members in who I can only speak about, the Pennsylvania members, right? Those that have been here since the inception of the chapter 4 years ago will tell you that, oh yeah, you know, I went all seasons, every single week to city council in the snow, in the rain, in the heat. I was there and I didn't get paid anything for that time. And that is another level, I think, of unwaged work, that we believe that, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the worker in the house of the person they are caring for, right? They are the ones who are going to have to ask for their rights. They're the ones who are going to have to do these negotiations. They're the ones who are going to have to let others know and speak up when something isn't going right, when something is being violated and disrespected. That's why they're the ones who have to do this work. So this is why community organizing is the method. Community organizing and labor organizing are the main methods that we use in the Alliance, that we believe are the vehicles for this change.
Margaret, do you wanna, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, can I just jump in and say something quickly on this point? Because you know, obviously you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know. My grandmother was a domestic worker. I mean, part of how I got an education in Barbados, in my poverty-stricken village, is because my grandmother was working as a domestic, first of all, or as a low-wage factory worker in New York, right? And then when I started, got out of university, emigrated, got out of university, started teaching in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and Brooklyn, that huge community control of schools fight that happened, and also for open admissions in university. Guess who were at the forefront of those struggles? They were the women, they were the welfare mothers who were in the community, because those who were the living domestic workers living in somebody else's house or at factory workers, they were too exhausted. I mean, I never saw them, maybe once a semester to come in for a parent-teacher conference, but the day-to-day struggles, working with the Panthers to get the free breakfast programs, all of these were mothers in the home, impoverished mothers. Ocean Hill, Brownsville was then one of the largest urban and poorest poverty districts, school districts in the United States. So all I'm saying is that a huge attack came down on them, like, you're on welfare, you're not doing anything, you're a lazy scrounger. In order for you to be productive to society, you have to go out and take any job, not recognizing the valuable work that these women were doing. And when workfare came in, removed those women from the community, and then you had a whole crisis with latchkey kids, etc. I'm just wanting to show the interrelationship between the two, because a lot of those live-in domestic workers, like the women in the film were saying, they left their children in order to go care for somebody else's children. How right is that? They should be getting resources so they don't have to do that. We want the flexibility to do both, or to do one or the other with, with that kind of support. So one example is the child tax credit. I'm glad to see you mentioned it, the moderator. We've been, including Carolyn, we've been very involved in fighting for that child tax credit, because it's the closest thing this country will come to a child allowance. We've been lobbying, we put out press releases, we're doing all kinds of things, okay? No time to really get into it now, including right now, because we are at a really critical stage. But one of the things, the ways in which they want to divide low-paid workers and unpaid workers with all of this is on the issue of refundability, because Senator Manchin is running around saying, in order to get the child tax credit, you are required to work. He's using the definition of work that leaves out impoverished women who are unpaid. That is how they have divided us. So we are hoping that the domestic workers, the home care workers, all of them will come on board and say, no, you're not going to divide us like that, because we are often the same person. You refer to it, Alejandro. We leave this job cleaning somebody else's house. We got to go home and cook and take care of our own kids. So we are going to stand. We're not going to allow you to penalize the unpaid caregivers, while at the same time you're giving some lip service to low-paid caregivers, when we know damn well that the reason low-paid caregivers, their wages are so low, is because most of the time women are expected to do it for nothing at all, for free. So those, in terms of organizing, I know a little bit about that. That's some of the work. That is some of the homework that we have to do to make sure that we're not divided in that way. And everything we say unpaid caregivers and low-paid caregivers. We never just talk about one and not the other. You know what I mean? And I think that we need to be doing more of that. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. All of these reflections, very important and crucial, I think, sort of like change of mindset about and how sort of like major wins, such as like the child tax credit, can be leverages for major wins in the wages of low wage paid care workers, and to really sort of like connect those issues together. And I want to, there's an audience here. People have been watching the documentary. I want to make sure that we have a bit of a chance to have audience participation. So I just want to remind you all, please, if you have, so I'm going to start looking at the chat and also on the like raise your hand function. So if any of you who are in the audience would like to ask a question, please make yourself noted by me and I will call on you. As I'm leaving some time for that, we will continue a little bit the conversation, but please do feel free to make yourself noted so that I can make sure that you can ask your questions. So there's like, I have so many thoughts. This conversation is like, yeah, it's making me think about so many things, but one of them, maybe this is not the most great direction. I'll just mention that one thing that I've been finding very interesting within the labor organizing world is this idea of bargaining for the common good, or like this idea that there is organizations such as unions or labor movements that should also be playing a role in making demands that are for the greater good, not just for the workers in the union, but advocating for things like paid leave, general, for everybody, or things like school funding for everyone, for all of the kids in Philadelphia. So there is a bit of a movement among certain union spaces to try to make the common good bargain part of the labor movement. And I think that what you're talking about, Margaret and Alejandro and all of you, about connecting this waste and unwaste work is a little bit doing that kind of that work of connecting, the common good to the bargains and to the demands that different organizations are making. And what I want to connect this to is on the hopeful note, if you were to choose, and I'm going to pressure here to make the answers short so that audience will ask more questions, but if you could choose one thing that makes you hopeful or excited about the current moment in terms of as a moment in which some of these conversations about supporting caregivers is unprecedented, it is really much on the agenda. Which thing would you highlight as something that is making you hopeful today that change is possible in how we support, value, and recognize caregivers?
I mean, I could go, but I would really, I feel as though I've been talking a bit, so I want
I'm going to ask you to choose one thing, Margaret.
One thing would be the care economy that's being fought for right now. Even that term, the care economy, it's very hopeful, and we have to fight and make sure it happens.
Excellent.
I think the one thing that gives me hope is that this sounds terrible, but that things are so bad. So it is bringing so much attention to the problem because things are so obviously bad. That gives me hope, because now what we've been screaming and saying for years, now it's getting attention because things are just so bad. So I have hope because things are so bad.
I was at a panel earlier this week where someone said, what gives me hope is that people are walking out of their jobs. And I think in a similar vein, as you were pointing out, in the sense of that's also, a bargaining lever or like a power lever. So I want to give a chance to Carolyn and Alejandro, if you want to answer this question before I'll move to audience.
What I would like to see far as workers that's getting paid and workers that's not being paid be put aside. I guess if I'm saying it right, because we have a tendency of fighting for what we need and what we want, but you got peoples out here that's getting paid and you got workers out here that's not getting paid. And it seems like we distance one another because one is getting paid and one is not getting paid. And we want to be equal with the paid workers too. Yes.
Can I also say something? I'm Zed.
Hi, Zed. Can you hold on a second? I'll just finish the round to the panel.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll be brief, and that's that, especially at my young age and my limited number of years working in this realm, it's just in these couple of years noticing the shift and noticing with each round of immigration reform federally being introduced that there's more pickup for it, right? That's something that our workers, again, speaking primarily in the Pennsylvania example, are most interested and most hopeful in is immigration reform, which opens up the doors with so many things.
And can I say one thing else about the child tax credit?
Yes, go for it.
I'm so glad they came up with that. It's like making families more healthier. You know, the kids is being taken care of better. They got food on their table and they ain't got to worry about the next meal. And with me and my 3 grandkids, we was very happy to get it because we did get a little vacation this year, which we haven't been vacationing in a long time. And I just hope they keep it going.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch up on the child tax credit as well. I'm somebody in the UK who is a heavy user of YouTube. And from the videos that I've been watching from across the pond, I have noticed that a lot of abusive African-American men have taken advantage of this child tax credit and filed for money for their children that they don't even bother to pay for nor visit. There has been a lot of abuses towards African-American women and financial fraud being taking place. You can go on YouTube and type it on the search engine. You'll see numerous Black single mothers talking about.
Oops. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you know,
sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, how can the system protect mothers like that who are not even benefiting from this child tax credit because their former partners are taking advantage of it?
Yeah, can I say something about that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, number one, I'm really worried about this singling out of Black men, okay? Domestic abuse happens across race, okay? What is it? 1 out of 4 women. And this idea, the stereotype of the mean and brutal Black man is a racist trope that has followed us through from the time of slavery. So I just want to establish, wait a minute, let me finish my point. I also am a part of the women's movement, and I work with people in the UK, including Women Against Rape, the Black Women's Rape Action Project, and other people. We are very well aware of the level of domestic abuse that happens of Black women, Indigenous women, and also other women. So if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it in that way. Now, with the child tax credit, we have been making a very specific demand that the money be paid directly to the primary caregiver. That is something, I mean, it's not law yet. There's still a lot of things that are being worked out right now. You're across the pond. We're here in the United States. You just heard Carolyn speak about the benefit that it has been for her, right? So I think that we have to really take care how we make our argument, whether it is a good argument, saying that victims who are domestic abuse have to be protected. That's been one of the reasons we have been saying to the government that the child tax credit needs to, first of all, go to the mother or go to the primary caregiver. And when there is a divorce or a separation, that like Canada and other places, it is the mother who then claims the credit or who determines who gets the credit. So this is an ongoing discussion, but I really have to warn us not to fall into racist tropes, even when we're trying to make a good argument.
America is a patriarchal society.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much for that, Margaret. I absolutely agree. I think we absolutely do not want to make any of those tropes, reiterate any of those tropes. So thank you for that quick answer. And I don't know if I should go on, but basically, yes, there have been some concerns raised about like where the child tax credits are going, and there's work being done precisely by the Global Women's Strike Organization and the Care Income campaign, who are advocating to make sure that the money reaches the pockets that it needs to be reaching and to avoid any misuse. But it absolutely is, I was just checking that there is over the just 2 first months of the child tax credit, and I read that the other day, food insecurity among children who are low income dropped by 9 percentage points. That's like thousands and thousands of children that did not go hungry just over the first 2 months of the child tax credit. Is a gigantic help to low income families, and it's making a huge difference. So for sure, there's things to tinker and to improve, but I think, yeah, the main, the early results are just so very clear. So I'm going to move to Pat that I have next on the audience stack, and then I'll move on to other audience. Thank you so much.
Well, I know Margaret was probably going to get to this later, but I just wanted to mention another very positive thing that's happened recently is the reintroduction of the Worker Relief and Credit Reform Act that Congresswoman Gwen Moore in Wisconsin put forward. And it's monumental, you know, because what she does is she, quote unquote, modernizes the definition of work and workers to include unpaid as well as, you know, low paid or paid caregivers, mothers and other caregivers, and low income students in higher education as workers, so that they makes them eligible for the earned income tax credit at the maximum level. And so to us, you know, this is really an important step that she's publicly saying, this is the second time she's introduced this, then we really want to try to push that forward. And so I just wanted to mention that as a very big step forward. And I also just wanted to share a quick story, but we wrote a letter to the New York Times, a letter to the editor that actually got published about the child tax credit, because somebody had expressed concern, a woman had expressed concern that she's afraid with the child tax credits that mothers might actually choose to stay home. And so, and our response, well, great, we have that choice, and and that we should be able, the ones to choose what's best for ourselves and our families, and not to have to take any old job because we're desperate. So anyway, I just wanted to mention those two things.
Thank you so much. Absolutely, yes. Gwendolyn, I have you next on the stack.
But I'm okay to wait if you want to let others go first, and that's totally fine. I'll hang back.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just like stunned, and I'm learning so much, and I am in awe of your work. I wanted to ask a question as both like a person interested in this on a scholarly level, but also as a caregiver, but also as a person who does paid work and uses childcare, and my kids' childcare center is in the back here because I'm very close to her, so I can pick her up when this is over. So just saying. You know, just thinking about, and I think this goes to Carolyn's point too, of like coalitional work. So like, how can I, and you know, I've been someone, I work at Penn and have been lucky to do some coalitional work with Pilar, thinking about how we can get more support for workers at Penn. And as part of that, like one of the things we tried to do was give some recommendations about Penn giving money to childcare workers, you know, in general, which is, you know, a small thing, but something they can do as a large, rich institution, we think. But it just, so I guess like the question that I have is like, what can we do? Like, how can we work better together as people who are using these systems as parents, being in coalition with these groups and organizations? In addition to like calling our representatives and doing things like that, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Let me answer that. Oh, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I just put it in the chat. I couldn't even put it in the chat fast enough. My hand is raised. You understand me? If Penn decides they want to start giving out money to childcare workers, because that is like 90% of the problem. Now, the other 10% of our challenge is under-resourced, under-trained, managing challenging behaviors, trauma. Like there are other challenges to providing care in a childcare setting, but money is a big part of it. And most of the pay and most of the work that is done in childcare programs, other people don't want to do. Other people don't want to do. It's not a cakewalk, as I'm sure you know, because you have seen probably what your child's childcare workers go through. So it's advocacy for funding, both government and philanthropic, is huge, huge. You want to know what you can do? Please advocate that childcare needs more funding. That would absolutely be effective. But my number is 610-733. Call me if Penn starts giving up. Call me. I'll be right over there to pick it
up. Right. I actually have a question for the sister who asked the question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's related. I agree about the funding part. Does Penn offer childcare free of cost for students, faculty, as well as staff?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well, you see,
absolutely the opposite.
That's a starting point. I'll tell you, years ago, when I taught at Queens College in the SEEK program for a while there and founded the Queens College Women's Action Group. We fought with the university on the question of childcare. And the first thing they said, okay, we'll provide childcare. We'll have a childcare center for faculty. And we said, no way. We want it for faculty. We want it for staff who tend to be low wage, the cleaners, et cetera.
Yes.
And we also want it for our students. And we pressed, we protested, we did petitions, et cetera. And we won that at Queens College and the City University of New York. After I moved out to LA, years later, I heard there was a CUNY-wide strike. What was that strike about? It was on the question of childcare, having childcare free of cost on campus for students, faculty, and staff, because that's also how they divide you up. The grad students who are, low paid, the professors, they like to carve us up and bring in the students too, because that's also a way, talk about coalition building and having a struggle that could be of benefit to all and will also lift up what the sister is saying, Zakiyyah is saying about resources for childcare generally, because that could also be brought into the struggle. But what an idea. Penn isn't broke, okay? And I've been really concerned about this divide between the academy and the community. We need to break that down. And this issue of childcare and fighting for it for everybody and lifting up the resources for folks like Zakiyyah and other people, it's all of a one piece. So I just wanted to put that thought in your head.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna ask
excuse me. And if anybody want to join the Crossroads Women's Center, just give us a call or somebody will put the check. We do need volunteers.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's one form of collaboration. That's one form of collaboration of people who want to become engaged in this movement, in the various organizations that are doing terrific work in advocating for changes in supporting caregivers. I think, yes, everyone here in the audience should be checking out. Maybe we should put actually the websites of each of the organizations represented in the chat so that people can take a look and potentially engage more directly. That would be amazing. If only one person attending here is doing that, I'm going to consider this a big success.
I have a one-sentence response.
Yeah, go for it.
It's imperative that I squeeze it in, that especially for those of you on this call who employ someone to clean your home, whether it's once a month or once a week, people who employ someone to take care of your children, or people who employ someone to take care of someone in their family. And of course, people on this call at least know someone who is that kind of employer. It's very important that you treat that work relationship like any other work relationship, get a contract negotiated. In the case of Philadelphia, right, anyone who employs someone in Philadelphia has to comply by law with the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, which my organization helped pass, and provide everything that is there. Break times, compensated meal break, obviously during COVID, PPE, all those sorts of things. But anyway, I'm just going to put those resources in the chat. And for those who don't, for those who aren't in Philadelphia, the same idea applies. Treat those working relationships, set them up with the dignity that you would set up in any other working relationship in any other workplace.
Thank you. I'm loving the chat with all of the links. Please, people, check them out. So I'm gonna shift to Sydney, who has a hand raised. Sydney, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. This started in what I was going to say when you asked, what was encouraging. And I think one really encouraging thing is that because of the movements that are represented on this panel, we're seeing in the Build Back Better Act demands for the child tax credit, support for low-wage domestic and wage caregivers, for childcare, and for an increase in the minimum wage. And I think that's a reflection of the movements that have been working. And Pilar, you took my suggestion. I was going to say, could everybody put their organization in the chat? Because I think we want to continue building those kind of working relationships.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that. Any other? So for all of you in the audience, we have all of the links showing up in the chat, so you can feel free to copy, check them out, check more information on all of the organizations, engage if you can. This is a really crucial moment. So all of the engagement will be very much welcome. I wanted to double check if there were other questions in the audience at the moment. And if not, I wanted to ask Pat, your hand is raised, but I don't know if this was from before or. Okay, sorry about that. So I think we want to maybe proceed and have like a last round of reflections on this moment, what people can do. If you want to mention like a particular pitch for a particular campaign or something that is going on that your organization is doing, basically have some final reflection on the conversation. Anybody who would like to start can go.
Okay, I'll just go then. Yeah, thank you for this. This is just, Zakiyyah, were you coming forward? Because I'll wait to go after you.
Go right ahead.
Go for it. All righty. Yeah, this has just been incredible. I'm so glad to connect with people on this panel and really hope that we can continue to be in touch. I also, Zakiyyah, worked in LA County, the Every Mother's a Working Mother Network. We fought for and we won one of the largest free of cost after school childcare in the country. And that was something, this was after welfare reform happening. The children were just out there, right? But we also know that the moms need the resources, don't they? And they need the kind of flexibility, just as the childcare workers need support, because they're often one and the same. Similarly, Alejandro, with the domestic workers, so glad to see there's that Bill of Rights in Philadelphia. We did a lot of support work at the UN level with the International Labor Office to win that domestic workers Bill of Rights. Actually, it was some of the work we did in the UN, and we were glad when Peru, the domestic workers in Peru, they just won that, and they're working now on some forward-looking legislation. If you're interested and your information is in the chat, we likely could send that information to you. And also, I have to just quickly mention the issue of the environment, because part of what we're saying with the Care Income Now campaign that we're doing in the US on the child tax credit and the right to welfare and a whole set of things is that it's not only about the caring of people, but it's about the caring of the environment, the caring of the land. I just saw watched a film about lobster fishermen in Maine and Massachusetts who were really upset because they were limiting how much they could catch lobsters to protect the right whale, which is under threat of extinction. And they were saying, look, we're losing our livelihood. You're protecting the whale, but how are we going to earn an income? This is where the care income comes in, because they have a case. They should be getting money to help to protect the right whale, just as some farmers get paid not to grow certain crops. You know what I mean? I think we really have to open up our brains, open up our minds to a whole other way of thinking and prioritize the caring of people, whether it's in childcare, home care, all of those areas, unpaid caregivers, as well as the care of the land and in the environment. Because as great as these movements are, if Mother Earth decides they've had enough with us and all of this stuff happens, none of it will matter. So we're really going to have to pay attention to introducing young children to food doesn't just come out of the market or out of a box, but actually grown, and really protect the environment and protect people. So that's really what I wanted to say. And I hope somebody in the chat has put the information for the Care Income Now campaign. We're vibrant, we're growing, we're multiracial, we're urban, rural, we're global, and we do everything from defending the farmers in India who are on strike, to defending the home care workers, to defending the child care workers, to defending mothers on welfare who are the most impoverished. So thank you for this. And I really hope that the kind of coming together for whoever put this panel together had the foresight to be able to bring us together and continue to do this kind of work. So thank you so very much, and all the best to all of you, and stay well and safe.
Thank you so much for that, Margaret. And I just wanted to jump in very quickly to say that, and I don't think it was intentional, that in the Build Back Better law, those two issues are really coming together by a de facto of American political. So and I think that there we have to really be together, because we do need massive investment in the transition towards a green economy, and we do need massive investment in the care economy to support caregivers. And this is also an alliance that it's attempted to be exploited and splitted, but we really shouldn't be splitting it. So I think, yeah, by some happenstance, this happened in this situation. But I'm very glad that you raised that. So I wanted to, others. I think Zakiyyah, you were gonna go as well.
Yes, I was just going to say closing thoughts. I am excited to see the documentary go far and wide, because it has an outstanding message that is very, very accurate. So I would love to see that go far and wide for sure. Make sure Michelle Obama gets a chance, because if it gets in her hands, then we really will get some attention to this issue. The other thing I was going to share just as a closing thought is being kind. So at WonderSpring, one of our core values is caring. Yes, we are in the childcare business, but we actually care about people. And so being kind to caregivers is a concept that is often foreign, that people don't think about. Be nice to the person who's actually taking care of your loved one. Be nice to the person who's actually changing your child's diaper. If that could be the other message that gets shared, caring about the caregiver as a human being would be what I would want to leave everyone with. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Alejandro.
Thank you, Zakiyyah, too, because that's a beautiful segue for something that I wanted to say, is that, again, what strikes me the most about the film is this almost larger than life, this almost superhero level of power and care and resilience and lasting that is there in Nunu and Patrick's work, right? And that's, again, something that we talk about in the Alliance, is that we have to step aside from this term resilience as the most valuable thing, when it would be better that people didn't have to be superheroes, that we didn't expect that of them, that we didn't demand that of them, and that we didn't care for them in the way that they're caring for us, right? And again, if there's one image to take home, it's the idea that people, in exchange for wages, go and take care of other folks' children, then come home and do the same thing now after working a whole day without the wage, right? And I am just very grateful to have been put in conversation with you all. I'm very optimistic for the future. I'm very optimistic for politically and socially, and culturally, because what we're describing now, all the problems structurally we've been discussing are political and economic results of culture, right? And we want to shift that, and we're, I think, headed in the right direction. Absolutely. And I'm very grateful to have found a little niche in this work, in this campaign, specifically in Philadelphia. And in terms of new campaigns from us, we're going to be doing, again, my role specifically is around enforcing the Bill of Rights. Margaret's been mentioning the UN and different legislations and different reports, and all these things are important in establishing a floor, but that doesn't change things the next day. And our work is so important to make sure that all of that is translated to everyone's experience on the ground and in each individual household, right? Both from the employer perspective, but obviously from the worker's perspective, and then ultimately from the cultural perspective. So again, I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to do the work that I do. And best of luck to all of you, especially those of you who are caregivers. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you for that, Alejandro. Carolyn, did you wanted to share some final thoughts?
No, I just got distracted by somebody at this door.
That's all right.
I'm just with the child tax credit, and I'm still with child welfare, where so the kids they do look for the love. They do look for love, and I hope that they can get a lot of love from the families that they're with. And I'm hoping everything go forward that we've been talking about. The tax credit for children, the welfare of the children, the domestic violence stop, the people get help with that. I'm for all of that. And I don't know what happened to my picture.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you can start it again now.
Oh,
there we go. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, but I'm with everything. I'm looking forward for everything to change. Changing everything. Child taxes. Oh, we keep that going. That's a good thing right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I was trying to make a video with my grandkids about the child tax credit, because they like to do the TikTok dance and stuff. But I'm gonna get them to get one together.
I want to see that video.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, Carolyn, just like I guess like highlighting one of the themes that you've been bringing, but I think we didn't really much have a chance to talk, and it's also something that I have other interest in, but like the child welfare, there's like a massive important conversation now about abolishing child protective services, because they've been like demonstratingly racist, invasive, and like abuse and separate families that did not deserve to be separated.
That's
People,
right.
just for being poor, they should not have to be separated for their children. You should be giving money to the parents who are poor instead of separating them from their kids. And there's, in the framework of like,
I believe if I was getting that tax credit back then, I would have my nieces right here today.
Exactly.
Saying that I was poor, I wasn't. I mean, I was low income, but children look for love, and they was getting all the love they can here, definitely.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
Yeah, the tax credit would have meant a whole lot back then. Yes.
And the budget for child welfare agencies jumped something like 20,000% from the 1980s until today. So instead of the resources going to the moms, going to the families, it's going into child welfare. And in Los Angeles County and other places, there's an epidemic of children being removed from their homes, not because of abuse, but because the families, like what happened with Carolyn, are poor. So they're mixing up poverty and neglect. And if they did that in my village, where we were all poor and no running water, electricity, they would have taken all of our kids from our village by that criteria. So Carolyn is right about the love and care, and you're right that the resources go to the families, go to the mothers, go to the grandmas, the primary caregivers, and that they stop mixing up poverty and neglect. And I also have to lift up the Poor People's Campaign here, which I'm active with, because I don't think without the Poor People's Campaign, the Build Back Better, the care economy would have been in Biden's agenda. We really have to credit that national, multiracial, grassroots, bottom-up fusion movement for really lifting up these issues and placing poverty on the agenda of the Democratic Party and in Washington, D.C. I just wanted to say that as well. Thank you.
Exactly. I just put it in the chat as well. Poor People's Campaign. You can also check out their activities. It's a federal-wide movement with many chapters and many activities across the different geographies of the United States. So that's absolutely a really important movement behind a lot of the changes in conversation that are happening. Okay, we could go on for a lot longer, but at the same time, we're all zoomed out after.
Yep, gotta go.
And we want to move on to other things. Thank you so very much.
I could talk all night.
Yeah, exactly. I wish we were in person and I could invite you to a snack and a drink now, but hopefully we'll be able to do that sometime in the future. Thank you very much to all of the audience for joining us, for watching the documentary with us, to all of the organizers, and to all of everyone that has helped to make the event possible. And thank you very, very much to all the panelists for coming today and for all the work that they've been doing every day for many years to advocate for caregivers. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for doing a great job moderating here and pulling this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Great to meet you all.